Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. Network switches, a little bit of unboxing, a little bit of history, maybe a few stories from my past life before a YouTube channel. And yes, I really am going to unbox all 5 of these today. We have metal switches, we have plastic switches, we have big fancy 16-port switches. Which should you buy? Should you replace the one you currently have? Does it really make any difference? We're going to talk about that today. Now, first of all, I understand network switches, not the most exciting topic for a video, right? Well, fair enough. How many other tech YouTubers do a video on network switches? Okay, if they're 10 gig or 100 gig or crazy insane stuff, maybe you'll find it over on Linus Tech Tips. Hi, Linus. But gigabit switches? Probably not. So this will either be the most exciting video I've done all month or the worst video I've done all month. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below. But since nobody else is doing them, I thought I would talk about it. Now, first, a little bit of backstory before we get into this. Let me explain where I come from on this and tell you a couple of stories. We'll start taking these out of the box and talk about the differences, pros and cons, and we'll get into some practical advice later in the video. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee. I might ramble for a while. I started my first networking company in 1996, August 1996 to be exact. I was the ripe old age of 19 years old, and I was full of ambition and not as full of knowledge as I thought I was. I did have a business partner at the time who was a little bit older than me, and that was very helpful because I would never have survived a year otherwise. But that company lasted till about 2001, then I started another by myself, and then, well, there's a lot of history between here and there. But in all of that time, I've worked everything from coax networks, 10BASE-2, 10BASE-T, went to fast Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet. I've seen a lot of stuff come and go. Anybody remember 3Com cards when 3Com was king and the other stuff was junk? I learned a long time ago, back in the old 10BASE-T days, if you really want a reliable network, buy 3Com. It just works. Sorry, NVIDIA. But it really does, or at least it really did back then, because while you could get the cheap cards to work, and the cheap cards would run you at the time, going from memory here, somewhere in the $15 to $20 per card range, sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't, sometimes the cable run couldn't be too long, it depended upon what switches you used, you didn't want to mix and match different brands cards in your network, you could run into issues if everything wasn't just right. What I liked about the 3Com cards, which were like 3 times as expensive at $60 a piece, is the 3Com cards worked with everything. I mean, you put them in and they worked every single time. And it didn't take very many service calls and call outs. This is back when I used to do that before I got into IT consulting. More on that in a minute. Before I realized it wasn't worth the savings to put the cheap junk cards in. And so we just started speccing out the better stuff. And my argument and explanation to clients was, you're paying me by the hour. Do you want to fix junk, or do you just want the stuff in place that doesn't require that you call me in the first place? That's what you're paying me for, right? In any case, so a lot of time has passed, and of course, that company, well, they got bought out and things changed. But nowadays, gigabit Ethernet is now built into most motherboards and has been for some time. You haven't had to buy an actual dedicated network card to install on a computer in quite some time. You can, but you haven't had to. Now, if you buy a dedicated network card, you're probably buying a 10 gig card, and that market still isn't very mature for the desktop. In our new filming studio, if you've been watching the moving vlogs on my channel, we did go ahead and install Cat6a for 10 gigabit Ethernet. Now, Cat6 will support 10 gig, but only to limited run lengths. Cat6a will support it for much, much further, and so I essentially future-proofed the place so that we can upgrade to 10 gig in the future. I thought about 10 gig, but then I priced the network adapters, I priced the switches, I priced the main switch, and went, yeah, no. It would have been thousands of dollars to make, many thousands of dollars to make the whole network 10 gig, and even just to make a couple of computers, even just to make maybe 3 of the computers, and the main switch have some 10 gig and the rest of the house be 1 gig, would have still been $1,000. Not cheap. So the cost to wire the house of Cat6a was only about 20% more than Cat6. Labor was the biggest cost. The cable itself was like $50 more for the spool, and the jacks on the wall were a little bit more, but not terribly so. So we went ahead and did that. But I went ahead and got gigabit switches, and I'm going to just use the gigabit built into all the computers for the time being. I suspect sometime in the next 2 or 3 years, 10 gigs is going to get really cheap, and then we'll all wonder why we're not using it. When it comes to my own personal experience with the old coax 10 base 2, the ring networks versus, say, 10 base T or 100 base T, my main experience with the coax stuff was ripping it out of the wall. I remember in around the 97 time frame, we were ripping a lot of coax out of the wall and replacing it with Cat5 cable at the time. Not even Cat5e or Cat6, that was just straight Cat5 back then. And putting in 10 megabit, not gigabit, 10 megabit per second, which, just to be clear, is a 1 megabyte per second transfer rate. Yeah, that was pretty brutal. To give you an idea, copying files to a USB thumb drive, a USB flash drive these days, is about 90 megabytes per second, give or take, depending upon the drive and whatnot. So a modern USB thumb drive would be 90 times faster than 10 base T, copy it on a thumb drive, walk to the other room, put it in the computer, and then copy it off. That would be like a bajillion times faster than using an old 10 base T. But I also remember where we started transitioning people to 100 base T. Fast Ethernet, where it was 10/100 cards, they certainly cost more, but then instead of 1 megabyte per second, it was 10 megabytes per second. A lot of people didn't need it. There were a lot of companies in the late 90s that we looked at doing it, but when we looked at their workload, they had a few printers attached. And yes, internet access was there, email access was there, but generally a lot of companies weren't doing enough to justify the cost, because it was a lot more expensive, kind of like 10 gig today. Yeah, you can do it, but it's expensive. So a lot of companies stayed with that for a while, but right around the turn of the millennium, then it got cheap and then everything started flipping over. And then, of course, 10 years later, everything went to gigabit. I mean, gigabit's been around for so long now and has been cheap for so long now that most companies in the past 10 years have been running on gigabit. Having said that, I distinctly remember the first 24-port gigabit rack mount switch that I installed in, I believe it was 2006. It might have been 05, it might be 06. My memory's a little bit fuzzy on this one. I did a lot of this stuff, so it all blends together. But it was around that time frame, and if you were to ask me the brand, I cannot remember at this point. But I do remember this. It was $1,000. I remember thinking it was $1,000 for a 24-port rack mount, and it was unmanaged, gigabit switch. But they had a large office. They had, I think, 21, 22 employees, something like that, and a server and a printer and whatnot. And so that really solved the mess in their closet. Essentially what they had is they had several smaller switches, and they sort of essentially had several separate networks with one switch kind of joining the separate networks. Like these 5 computers were connected, and those 5 computers were connected, and the 2 in the conference room were connected. And then they had run cables from those to another switch, and it was an absolute spaghetti nightmare. Now that can work. I mean, how do I put this? At low scales, at the 20 to 30 computer level, you can have 5, 6, 7 of these scattered about with just sort of random connections, and it works to a point. It's a bit of a mess. It's a cabling mess. It's a diagnostic mess if anything goes wrong. It's hard to add and expand and manage the setup. And that particular client, they did not have a server at the time. They basically had an ad hoc network of Windows XP machines. And what we did is we actually put a Dell PowerEdge server. It was a dual socket quad, I think it was it a quad core or dual core? I think it was, it was a 2-socket, 2-core, you know what? I don't remember. I remember it was expensive. It was several $1,000s. It had a lot of memory. It had dual backup power supplies. We put that in the closet on the bottom of the rack. We put the 24-port switch in and a few other things, and essentially made sense out of their network. It actually was running Windows Server 2003. I don't think it was running R2 at that point. In fact, that might have been 05 because it was just running Windows Server 2003. Man, it's been a long time. Memory heaven. Now, if you're watching this video going, hey, I came to learn about switches, why are you rambling? It's a network switch video. I'm trying to make it fun and interesting. I'm sharing stuff. You know, I really don't remember. as I sit here and think about it. There's a number of stories that I can recite like verbatim, but as I think if it was '05 or '06, I don't remember. I can picture it. I remember that thing was an absolute monster. It weighed a ton. It was about that tall. It was really expensive. How much was that? I want to say it was $3,000. It wasn't the clock speed that was fast. It had ECC memory. It had RAID 1 backup, redundant storage. It had dual power supplies. It was nice. And that was running Windows Server 2003. They had some program they were updating to, some specific vertical program for their industry they were using that they needed to have Windows Server installed, the new version, the new thing they were upgrading to, and this is what got us involved, is they had been running on a peer-to-peer ad hoc Windows XP network, as many, many small businesses do. If you've got 20 employees, you probably don't need a server. Maybe. But you probably don't need the expense and management of a server. A peer-to-peer does work. But when your specific program or your application or what you use for your business, if it will only run on Windows Server, then you don't have any choice. So we came in and we rewired the place and we put in the switch and we got rid of a lot of these things that were laying around and we made sense out of the entire place, set up Microsoft Office, put in Microsoft Outlook, got their email set up, got their internet connection properly shared around, set up permissions, protected the owner's files because let's just say there was too many permissions on the network, but that's pretty common in small businesses. What happens in companies like that is Bob, who was the bookkeeper, or Frank, who did whatever, he was the computer guy. And he was just the guy in the office who knew the most about computers. And so what would happen is the owner would quickly discover, oh, Frank, he knows computers, he's smart. Remember, this was the 90s and 2000s. I mean, it's okay, it really hasn't changed that much, has it? But it was really bad in the 90s. Oh, Lord, the number of times you'd have a company that had no business not having IT support, but, Joe in accounting did it. Anyway, so essentially we'd come in and clean all that up and say, okay, look, we're going to put you on retainer. You have a lawyer, or you should. If you have 20 employees, you should have a lawyer on retainer. And if you don't, you're going to need one at some point. We work the same way. You're going to put X amount of dollars on account with us, and we charge X number of dollars per hour for normal support. We have a call-out fee, but here's the difference. You can count on us being here. We're not going to say, oh, man, well, we'll get to you next Tuesday. We'll have to look at our appointment book. I'll come out at 8 o'clock at night if I have to. I'll come out at 10 o'clock at night. I'll come in before you open in the morning if I'm going to work on something that would interrupt your workflow. You'll pay me an early call-out, an after-hours fee. But if you need support, you won't be sitting there going, oh, what do we do? Our systems are down. And a lot of times these business relationships would start, it's kind of turning into a history lesson. We'll open these in a minute, don't worry. But essentially these business relationships would start when Frank in accounting or Bob or whoever reached the end of their knowledge base and they would essentially have to say to the boss, I don't know how to fix it, or I don't know what's happened, or I don't know where the data went, or I don't know why this computer doesn't print to that printer, or I don't know why your laptop doesn't work with this anymore, and they'd tinker with it. And 3 hours later, it's still not fixed, and the boss is like, dude, seriously, what's going on? I thought you were going to fix this. And then eventually they realize they need to call a professional. Here's the funny thing. Back in 1996 and through the early 2000s, I did a lot of this work myself. I did wiring, Windows NT4 servers, the first Windows NT. I never did Windows 3.51. That was before my time. But I did a Windows NT4 server install, did Windows 2000. I did one or two Windows 2003, the first one. Never did an R2 personally. Why? Because at that point, how do I put this mildly? You can hire kids who will do that for beer and pizza, essentially. Once you get close to your 30s and you get out of your 20s and you realize that crawling into the drop ceiling of an office and running network cable and sitting there and installing programs and configuring Active Directory in Windows is really not what you should be doing. Some people who have watched my channel in the past have asked me if I've ever been in sales. Convincing the guy who has money, who owns a company, that he needs to spend money on a non-sexy thing like servers and backup in uninterruptible power supplies was kind of my thing. Sitting down and giving him an analogy that he could understand and get him to part with $5,000 or $10,000 on something that didn't look pretty in his office. I never found a problem getting the owner of a business to part with $5,000 to put a plasma television in the conference room. Remember, this was 10, 15 years ago. Plasma televisions were $5,000. They don't even sell plasma TVs anymore, but we put quite a few plasma TVs in conference rooms. LCD TVs weren't that great back then. Plasma was much, much better at the time. Of course, plasma burn-in, I know, conference rooms. Yeah, well, what can you say? They were really good looking back then. Pioneer Elites, of course, they were more than $5,000, but it's like a Pioneer Elite, but it costs less. It's a sales pitch, what can I say? So getting the owner of a company to put a plasma TV in his conference room gives him something to show off to his other rich buddies. It gives him something to show off to his clients. Clients could come. I remember we did a job for a home construction company in the late 90s. We put one of those TVs, 99? Yeah, the Y2K. We had to replace everything. They still had was it Windows 3.1 or Windows 95? I don't remember. But essentially, they were having to upgrade their software. They needed some new stuff. We were upgrading them. They actually were one of the clients we took from 10 base T to 100 base T to fast Ethernet because they wanted more speed on the network and whatnot. We put Windows NT 4 servers in and a few other things. But in any case, so they put some fancy stuff in their conference room, fine. Then you sit down and you have the backup conversation, you have the UPS conversation, you have the, okay, if your server over there fails, does your company still function? No? Then you need two of them. You've got 25, 30, 40 employees in your office. You have clients coming in tomorrow. They were a luxury home construction company. They built a fancy $1 million completely custom homes. Clients would come into their office. They would sit down in the fancy conference room, hence the fancy TV on the wall, and the big, huge oak table or whatever it was, mahogany, I have no idea. I should have taken pictures at more of these places. It would be really cool to have a photo album, but it never occurred to me at the time to take pictures of these things. They probably wouldn't have wanted me to anyway, but 30 years, 20 years hence, who would have cared? In any case, so they had to upgrade everything and replace everything. And I would say to them, okay, your client's coming in. These people are going to spend $1 million on a house. And what they would do is they come to the conference room and they'd sit down with the initial planner, talk about square footage and basic budgets and how many rooms and how tall are the ceilings in the dining room and what kind of not too specific details, but they'd have a general overview. They'd have that conversation. I found it actually kind of fascinating because obviously this was $1 million homes in the 90s. Who knows what they would cost today? If the client moved forward, then they would have several follow-up visits with designers to pick out chandeliers and drapes and, just people with more money than I've ever seen in my lifetime. But that being said, I'd say to the boss, okay, if they come in and your sales guy or your designer cannot pull anything up on that big TV, if your person in the back sitting in front of the computer who inputs all this into your specialized program can't work for 2 days, what does this do to your business? Oh, well, we can't have that. We'd fall behind schedule. We've got deadlines to meet. The contractors require stuff. A lot of these things are special order. We've got to order them 4 weeks in advance. These people coming in absolutely are not going to accept those kind of delays. Great. So you need 2 servers. One running, one backup. Very easy to switch over if there's a problem. Well, how much is that going to cost? A few $1,000s. A few $1,000s? Yeah. Now let's talk about backup, and we get to the UPS conversation, and pretty soon this person is spending $20,000 to $25,000 because they need a spare backup server. They need 2, maybe 3, depending upon the critical nature of the business, 2 or 3 backup workstations. If Bob in accounting or Jane who does the entry work for the homework, because that this really cool software program that lets them, it was very advanced for the time, I'm sure it's common now, but essentially what would happen is we spent almost a month in and out over 3 weeks doing it, because we had to do it in transition, we had to do it in pieces because we couldn't shut them down to do everything, so we migrated a piece at a time. It's very cool actually. They showed me the program they use where they would literally go in and put, okay, there's this many 2x4s and this many whatever, and the program would figure out how many nails and 2x4s and shingles and tiles, and it would price the job out so that they could sell it without them having to sit down with a manual piece of paper and pen and do it all by hand, which they had done previously, which was absolutely awful. And so we get through all of this, and I said, look, if Jane, who does this work, if her computer crashes, if her hard drive fails, if her memory dies, if the thing short circuits, you're going to walk over to that closet. You're going to pick out one of the spare computers. You're going to set it down here. You're going to switch the cables out in the back to it. You're going to turn it on. And then you're going to go over to the backup tape and you're going to restore last night's backup. And you'll be up and running in an hour. And you don't have to wait for me to come out. How much do you pay Jane? How much is a day of her time worth? The spare workstation will cost you $1,000. How much does it cost you not having her work for a day? How much is it worth to have her back up in an hour? Now, that's a decision that each company has to make separately. But those are the types of conversations that you go through when you're doing this sort of thing. Boy, I really have segued off from network switches, haven't I? We will get to these. Don't worry. I don't know. I'm having fun with a history lesson. What can I say? In any case, so then you need UPSs, uninterruptible power supplies, on every piece of electronics in the office. The computers, the printers. A lot of people overlook printers. So the laser printers are a challenge because they draw stupid power when they start up. If they're in sleep mode and they activate, you really have to be careful with those on UPSs. Sometimes those aren't practical to put on UPSs unless you're a major installation or you have the big rack mount UPSs, which are expensive. But everything else should be on UPSs. The server should be on UPSs, and the server should have dual power supplies. And then we talk about backup solutions. I'm not going to discuss backup solutions in this video because I frankly could do a whole nother video. In fact, I've done a video on backups. That probably needs an update in any case. By the way, backups, $5 a month, unlimited backup, Backblaze, down in the video description below. I personally use Backblaze and have been a Backblaze customer since before I had a YouTube channel. That is an affiliate link. I do get something if you sign up with them, but it's a free trial, no credit card required. It really is unlimited. Right now, as I record this, I have 40 terabytes of data backed up online with them for $5 a month. I don't know if they're happy about that, but they haven't complained. And I don't have any other relationship besides an affiliate link. There's not sponsors or anything else, but Backblaze really is awesome. I've tried CrashPlan. I've tried Carbonite. They suck. Seriously, I'm sorry, they do. Backblaze is where it's at in terms of value, performance, service, etc. It's very, very quick. I film a video. Within an hour of filming this video, the raw video will be backed up with Backblaze. They do 20 threads. It backs up at 100 megabits per second. I kid you not, it really, really does. It's very, very quick. Well, if you have a good internet connection, I have gigabit fiber. But I get about 100 megabits per second, or about 10 megabytes per second upload speed, which is plenty fast enough for backup. Anyway, putting backup aside, by the time you've added all that up, you're $20,000, $25,000. I cannot tell you how much indignation from owners of companies who have all these employees and they balk at spending $25,000 on this stuff. TVs, laptops, fancy computers, big screen displays, sure, no problem. The back-end stuff, it's not sexy, it's not pretty, it's not fun, and they don't want to spend any money on it. Keep in mind, if you have 25 employees with an average annual wage of $50,000 a year each, you have $1 million a year payroll. Some of those people are going to make more, maybe some will make less, but you have other expenses, well, FICA taxes, insurance, vacation, etc. A $50,000 employee actually costs you like $70,000 or $80,000 a year, and then you have the office space to hold 25 employees. You have the electric and the insurance and the cost per square feet. You're spending $4 or $5 million a year on office and utilities and insurance and benefits and salaries, and you're complaining about 25 grand? Yeah, shush. Shut up. We're going to put it in because this is what you need to do. You are leaping over dollars to pick up pennies, quite literally. You are being the most penny-wise, pound-foolish there ever has been. Your entire company, the productivity of 25 people, is dependent on this? Come on, let's get with it. Now, that had varying degrees of success. And of course, at the end of the day, they're the customer and they can do what they want. Now, I used to install that stuff. I stopped in right around the mid-2000s, 2007, 2008. I never did Windows Server 2008 or anything beyond. I stopped. And the reason I stopped was one thing that I discovered is I found it easier to sell this stuff if I could make one further pitch. Mr. Bob executive person, you're going to hire me and you're going to pay me to advise you on strategies and risk mitigation and what you should do for your business. But you are not going to have me do the work. I don't profit from you following my advice. You follow my advice because you pay me for my advice. But you'll actually have to have somebody else do the work. Now, I can make recommendations, and I'll give you several recommendations, and I don't care who you go with. But what I will say is that because I don't profit from the advice, I profit from you being happy with it and discovering that I'm correct. When I say go out and spend $25,000, it's not because I want you to give me $25,000. And I found that that was a much easier sales pitch to make because at the end of the day, they're not stupid. They think, well, of course, it's easy for him to tell me I should spend all this money. He wants me to write him a big fat check. Being written a big check looks impressive. Back when I used to do it, being written a $100,000 check, a $200,000 check, looks nice. Computers, workstations, switches, software licenses, etc. If you have 25 to 50 employees, you're buying all of your software. I know a lot of people don't register their copies of Windows or they download their software or whatever. If you have 25 employees, you have to get licenses to all of your programs. I remember back in the good old days of Windows, we'd set up all the machines, we'd build them all together, and then we'd clone Windows across all the drives. And then we'd take their 15, 20, 25 copies of Windows XP or Windows 2000 or whatever it was, and we'd stick it on the shelf, and here's what I'd say to the business owner. That's your insurance policy against one of your employees calling the whistleblower hotline with the Business Software Alliance. The Business Software Alliance pays bounties to employees that rat out their companies that don't have licenses. You can hold up that stack of licenses, and of course this is back with the OEM bundle kits that had the manual, the disc, and the hologram still, and I say, look, you can hold that up and say, nope, we got all the licenses we need for all of our machines. Then it'll make them go away. Because otherwise, you can get fined, and the employee who whistleblew you, who can stay anonymous, collects, I think at the time it was 25%. So yes, you're spending $3,000 on software licenses that we're going to throw on the shelf and you're never going to do anything with because you have to. I just had a look at that recording. That was exactly, I kid you not to the second, 23 minutes of rambling. Now, it won't be 23 minutes in a video because I'll make a few trims and cuts in there. There was a few extended pauses while I contemplated. But so far, there should be over 20 minutes, maybe closer to 25 minutes with the first intro part to this video. I hope you guys are a fan and enjoy this. I thought about taking all that and putting it into a separate video, but they're network switches, and I kind of got off on a rambling rant. Let's bring this to the current day. I mentioned 24 port, $1,000, 12 years ago. Maybe it was 13, I don't remember. But this was $45. Now, it's not $45 on the day I filmed this. I think it's, let me go look. $62 on the day that I filmed this cost. It was the daily deal. They had a sale on a whole bunch of stuff that day. It was a pretty good deal. But regardless, $45, $62, $53, whatever. 16-port gigabit, that is amazing. Now, these are 5 ports on the top and 8 ports on the bottom. Plastic, metal. 2-year warranty, lifetime warranty. These were really cheap deals of the day, and I thought, well, you know, for less used areas, for things that are only going to have 1 or 2 plugged into them, I'll get some cheap ones for those areas. For the more in-demand areas where I need better quality units, I'll buy these. Just to give you an idea, on the day that I filmed this video, the 8-port plastic switch with a 2-year warranty was $17. The 8-port metal switch with a lifetime warranty was $25. There's $8 difference. It's the cost of a Subway sandwich. It's lunch. Now, does it matter? Well, that depends on your situation. Let me offer you this thought. In the past 2 years, Now, I have quite a few switches because I have computers in almost every room of my house. I had a lot of leftover stuff when I shut down my former consulting business. But I have replaced 2 different plastic switches in the past 2 years. I actually cannot remember the last time I have ever replaced a metal switch. If you look at the features of these, they're identical. They have the same traffic management software, they have the same energy management, the same green rating, the same list of features. They appear to be identical. They might actually be identical internal for all I know. I haven't actually opened one up to look. But my experience with the plastic switches is they have a 2-year warranty for a reason. And those have a lifetime warranty for a reason. In my opinion, unless you are incredibly strapped for money or you just find a crazy, like if you find this one for $10 or something, okay, fine, $10, whatever, get one. Otherwise, get the metal switches. They're better. But I've got 2 5 ports and 2 8 ports. We're going to take them out. I'm going to put them side by side on the desk. And I will take this bad boy out here in just a second and show that to you as well. Let's start with the plastic switch. We're going to do the 2 5 port switches first. Now, how much of this I leave in and how much of this I trim out, I don't know. I'm taking network switches out of a box. This is either the craziest thing or the most awesome thing. I'm not sure which. You'll have to let me know in the comments below whether or not, come on, you'd think I could get it off. There we go. Now for the exciting moment, unboxing a 5-port plastic switch. If you had asked me a month ago if I thought I'd be doing this, yeah. Come on, get out of there. It's stuck, Captain. Yeah, I know. But it does have an installation guide. Seriously? There's an installation guide? Really? General specification. You know, in fairness, I guess they've got to list this stuff. There is a frequently asked question. Why is the power LED not lit? The power LED should be lit when the power system is working normally. If the power LED is not lit, please try the following. A1. Make sure the power cord is connected to the switch with power source properly. I am willing to bet their tech support has gotten phone calls that has solved the problem. Number 2, make sure the voltage of the power supply meets the requirements of the input voltage of the switch. It comes with it. Why wouldn't it work? And 3, make sure the power switch is on. Turn it on. Hey. Question 2. Why is the link/activity LED not lit when a device is connected to the corresponding port? Please try the following. A1. Make sure the cable connectors are firmly plugged into the switch and the device. Shove that thing in there. A2. Make sure the connected device is turned on and works normally. Okay. Right. A3. Try to change the connected device's transmission speed and duplex mode. You know, I remember a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away having to think about such things. You'd have to have something pretty old plugged into this for that to be an issue. And number 4, the cable must be less than 100 meters long, 328 feet. If you're running cable lengths longer than 100 meters, you should know what you're doing. You should probably have somebody professional wiring for you. And you really need to sit down and look at signal boosters or the quality of cable you're using. Not all cables equal. It all technically meets the specifications, but you can buy higher quality cable. In any case, interesting. And then there's a little connection diagram, and it says, let's see here, plug the things into the ports. Well, I definitely needed help with that. Link activity light. Link present but no activity. Flashing, transmitting, receiving data, off, no link. That's how every switch everywhere has worked since the dawn of time. Well, that's actually not true, but still. So taking it out of the box now. I know. This has that wonderful, oh, we get to do a plastic peel. It's exciting, isn't it? Here, I'll take that up so I've got something to grip. Everybody loves the plastic peels, right? This is that piano black plastic that catches every fingerprint on Earth. I cannot stand these things. You can't touch this without leaving a fingerprint on it. Here's what's interesting. It said in the instructions, make sure the power switch is on. There's no power switch. It's just you plug it in, it's on, and there's the 5 ports in the back, and that's about it. Little LED light in the front. We will set that down there for just a second. Is this not... It's adorable. That is the cutest, saddest little connecting device ever. What can I say? Okay, we'll set that down right there. 1 down, 1 to go. Now, when I repeat this process with the 8-port switches, I'll go much quicker. Maybe I'll just leave the peeling of the plastic in here because if anybody is still watching this video at this point, I hope it's because you're a fan of me and not because you really want to see what these look like unboxed. And if you're a fan of me and you're still watching, thank you. I appreciate it. I do. Because I recognize that these longer videos, you know, the watch time isn't high. Most people have left by the time they get to this length in a video, and so what can I say? You must be a true Tech Deal fan if you're still here. But this one should look much nicer. Oh, that slid out nice and easy. That wasn't stuck at all. And we have another installation guide. No, I won't read the whole thing to you again, don't worry. Interesting, it shows a picture of an 8-port switch. The other installation guide showed a 5-port switch, and this says this is a 5-port switch, but it shows an 8-port switch. Interesting. The Q&A is different. Fair enough. Don't worry, we're not going to read that. This is the important part. This is, oh yes, nice. That's real metal. The only thing I will say about this, and okay, practical, useful information right now. The power connector and the Ethernet ports are on the same side. Nothing comes out the front. I like that. Here, the power switch is on one side. The Ethernet ports are on another. Now, I understand if you had something rack mount or mounted up and, you know, power's in the back and these ports in the front, you want easy access in the front of a rack, fine. You're not rack mounting a 5-point switch. You're not. I mean, seriously. It does have these things on the bottom. Oh, that's actually really cool. I'll zoom in and edit, if I can remember to do it when I edit something this long. But right here, it's actually got mounting holes for mounting either direction on a wall, but it's got protective covers to keep stuff from getting inside the switch. And when you push in, they actually go in so that you could put this on, push it on the screws or mounting pegs, push it down, and it would mount. That's actually pretty cool. Just in case anyone wants to steal your $17, or in my case, I think I paid $14 for this, there is a lock, one of those Kensington lock things like for laptops and stuff. That's like the least used feature ever. Whatever. These connectors are much nicer. On the plastic switch, these are all plastic. In fact, this entire thing is very cheesy and plastic. And if that tapping is loud, I apologize. This doesn't weigh anything. I mean, the connectors are plastic. Yeah, the whole thing is just extremely cheap. This, okay, the metal shell weighs something. The internal guts are probably identical. But where you plug in cables is metal. That's actually metal, and that's going to survive much longer. It's got the activity lights right there on the ports, which this doesn't have. It's got a power light here on the back. These right now, when I'm filming this, are less than $15, $14, $13. These are $17. Buy the metal one. That's my opinion. Unless you really like piano black that catches fingerprints. Now, this is interesting. Power adapter. Okay, this is not the same size. Look at it. Why? There's got to be a reason for this. Oh, wait, hang on. This looks... Have I lost my mind? Is this disconnectable? Well, if it is, it's probably not. This almost looks like it could be adapted to different plugs, like it's international or something. It looks like there's a place to disconnect it, but it may be permanently clipped in. But in any case, that's much larger for whatever it's worth. The metal one comes with rubber feet. You don't need it on the plastic one, but this, actually, that would scratch the desk. Let me put these on. We get to peel off the paper from the rubber backing. Any of you still watching this, how many of you thought you'd be watching a Tech Deals video where I unbox a 5-port Ethernet switch and then put the little rubber feet on? I hope you're having fun. And if not, there'll be a more interesting video tomorrow, not to worry. There we go. That's what she wrote. Okay, now we've got rubber feet. That's what it should look like. Spend the $17, buy that one. The 8-port switches are going to essentially be the same thing as these, just larger. So, okay, I'll open them real quick because why not? But I should put mood music on. There is a benefit to unboxing this. You get to see an even larger peel. If I can get my fingers around it. There you go. Cheap plastic with cheap connectors. It'll do the job. Oh, that fell out. Now that's interesting. The 8-port plastic one came with the larger adapter that the 5-port came with rather than the small one. 5-port, 8-port plastic. Interesting. That takes up the whole package. In fact, this might almost be the same cardboard. Maybe not. No plastic to peel off because it's decent metal material, and that is fairly substantial. My only complaint is that the power port is on one side and all of the Ethernet connectors are on another because, you know, rack mount. But it also has the lock so nobody steals your $24 switch, but that's very nice. Comes with the same adapter, and it comes with the same feed. And yeah, why not? We'll leave this in here because this is a test. This is a loyalty test to see how loyal you are to the Deal Nation. Thanks for sticking around. If by chance, if by some freak chance, this is your first time watching a Tech Deals video, if by some freak chance you're still watching this and it's your first Tech Deals video, this isn't how most of the videos go. It really isn't. It's, well, you know what? I gotta switch this around. There we go. Oh, there you have it. A 5 and an 8-port plastic and metal Ethernet switch. Buy the metal ones. With those things out of the way, we get to the coup de grace, which normally this would be really fancy and expensive, but as I said, it wasn't. It was $45. That's crazy. I bought those on a daily deal as well. It was a couple weeks ago. The metal 8-port was $20. Normally it's $25. So $45, $20. That I want to say was, I don't remember if it was $15 or $12 or it was really cheap. And then those were really cheap. I think I actually paid $10 for that one on that daily deal. But I didn't intend to make these into a video. As I said, I sat down thinking, do I do an unboxing? I kind of looked at them and thought, well, I kind of got a collection here. Do I do something with it? I bought them. I might as well make a video out of them. And all 5 of you who find this interesting can watch and enjoy. There's probably other videos that I should be making instead. There's probably 100 other videos I should make. Lifetime warranty, what does it say here? Tech support, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or support something at TP-Link. Warranty policy. Well, it's a limited lifetime warranty, which means it limitedly covers next to nothing. It's interesting that the box opens on the bottom. Oh, it's a full... Okay, that's interesting. It opens this way. Well, now that's an actual installation guide with actual pages. Would somebody explain to me why you need... Well... Okay, this does have the hardware for rack mounting installation. These tools are not provided with our product. If needed, please self-purchase them. Yes, of course. Cabling reasonably for lightning protection. Requirements for cabling outdoors. Aerial cabling without safeguard is not allowed. It is not allowed cabling down the building to connect network devices in different floors. Really? For those of you who don't know, Cat 5, Cat 6 cable is not designed for being run outdoors. Anyway, that's interesting. What's in here? We'll open this first. Oh, for those of you who can't see, sorry. It's a switch in a box. Cardboard. Oh, now this is interesting. This is an actual... That's an actual standard 3-prong connector, just like you would have on a computer. I didn't know that used that. That's interesting. I love it when they do that because that means you can replace the power cord with anything. You don't need a special power adapter. Ah, tools. Okay, it does come with the brackets to extend the length to mount to racks. That's cool. So the screwdrivers and tools and wrenches and stuff you need to do that aren't included, but the rack mount hardware is. We shall just slide this off nice and gently. Well, what do you know? A 16-port switch. Yes, I've seen a bunch of these in my lifetime. That is interesting. Standard 3-prong plug. I didn't think a device of this size would use that. I thought it would still use this, one of those little micro power adapters. I know the 24-port full-width rack mount switches will use that, but I didn't know if this would or not. I didn't look at it that closely. That's interesting. It has a grounding screw for protection, for surge, and it's got a little lightning symbol on it. I don't think that's going to protect against lightning. You'd need a lot more than that. But, yep, these are all metal connectors, and, well, now that I look at it, these are metal covers. I have a sneaking suspicion. If I were to pull these metal covers off, I would find plastic underneath. Don't quote me on that, because I'm not going to rip them off, but I'll bet you guys $5 that that's what would happen. You can see here on the side the screws on both sides for installing the rack mount brackets, one on each side to, you see here how it extended out and make it long enough to put into a rack. I don't know. It seems a bit much for that. Does this have a fan? This does not have a fan. Now this is interesting. This is auto switching between 100 and 240 volts. And since it uses a standard plug, you could replace that cord with your country of origin. And if you were to obtain this in a different country, you could use this pretty much everywhere. Now here's what I do like. Instead of having activity lights on each of the... Does it have them? No, it does not. Instead of having activity lights on each of the ports, it actually has an activity panel here, which, as I would prefer, it just gives you one place to look. Very nice. It's a switch. Plug it in. It just works. Hang on, I spoke too soon. I am not rack mounting this, needless to say. We'll take these out. I don't even know what I'm not going to do anything with those. It does come with the screws. That's nice. Oh, there it is. Almost lost it. We are going to put the feet on here. This is going into the homeroom, the server closet. It's not really a server closet. In the filming studio. Inside there is the router from AT&T for our Gigafiber. Gigabit up and gigabit down is really nice. If you've never had it, you don't know what you're missing. It is really nice. Most people don't need it, but for what I do, it's very, very nice. It basically removes internet connection as an obstacle to doing things. Everybody's server speed is really the limitation. That is going to go in there, and all of the cables from around the house are run up to the attic down into that room. There are 2 6-port wall switches. We have 11 total runs in the house that go in there. And then, of course, one inside the closet goes to the router itself. So the router will plug into this, and then this will plug into the 11 ports in the wall, leaving me several free to add to it in the future. Although, honestly, I don't think we will. We've pretty much run them everywhere we're going to. The expense was getting Cat 6A wired into the house. $45. These things are the cost of lunch. This is trivial compared to those costs. But if I had wanted a 10 gig main switch and a couple of 10 gig smaller switches, the cost goes through the roof. And then in addition to needing 10 gig switches in the rooms and a 10 gig switch, even if it's just 2 or 4 ports in the homeroom, then you also need 10 gig NICs in the actual computers themselves. And those cost about $70, $80, $90 a piece, depending upon which ones you buy. So if you do even just 3 computers, $300 for those, $400 or $500 for this, $100 each for those, you can spend $1,000 or $1,500 doing it very quickly, which is why we just did this. Thank you all of you who managed to reach it this far into the video. Linked in the video description below will be links to all of these. If by chance you need a network switch, do me a favor. Support the channel, support the New Filming Studio. Use the links to Amazon and Newegg down in the video description below when you're buying these and everything else there. It would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Like the video, subscribe using the subscribe button down there. Hopefully everybody watching at this point is already subscribed. But if you're not, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notification icon next to it to be notified of when new videos come out, because without hitting that bell button, you don't get all the notifications. And then, of course, leave your comments and thoughts down in the comment section below. Was this a fun side diversion? Do you want to see more videos like this? Less videos like this? Was this crazy? Was this interesting? Did you laugh? Did you listen to it late at night and let you put it to sleep? Did you listen to it at work when you should have been working and tell your boss, hey, I'm watching a video. Look at the title. It says network switches. I'm learning about network switches, boss. In any case, thank you all for being here. I will see all of you next time.